Good afternoon, Don Steele here. I'm going to do a short video on what guys who have become successful working with me have in common. I get that question a lot. What do they have I don't have? So the names that are always mentioned are Miles, Vince, George, Enrique, Eric, Dr. J, and Paul from Calabasas. Those are the names where the guys went from zero to hero, literally zero, to hero meaning dating and mating. And my favorite quote that covers what they had in common comes from Miles. He was the '1 man until Vince came along and wrote the Gantt chart. Miles is, at the time, was about 30, 6'2", 140 pounds, bald. And he managed to do it. He had so many girlfriends, his dick was sore. And he would post helpful hints on the list. It's something called the Best of Miles in the archives. He and Vince had the most famous quotes of all. Miles' quotes that got me to understand the essence of what I did to go from zero to hero after getting divorced at 42 years old, not knowing a fucking thing about what had happened during the sexual revolution, nothing about women's lib, nothing about everybody fucking everybody since the 60s. I didn't get any of that. I was left over from 1962, okay, with the dating skills of a 22-year-old in 1962 at 42. So everything I did by making mistakes. That's what I did. I made mistakes, one after the other, thousands of them. And that's how I learned what the fuck I was doing. It's the only way you can learn too. But you have a book. And Miles' quote, let me get back to that. Miles' quote was, "I'm not a genius." Somebody was praising him on the list for being so smart about this or that, or being able to recover from that faux pas he did with this girl. And he said, no. I've come so far so fast because I'm willing to make mistakes faster than everybody except Don Steele. That's right. The only way you learn is to fuck up, okay? A lot of guys fuck up and give up. No, you fuck up and you go sit down somewhere and think about it. What did I do wrong? Have I done that before? Has it ever worked? Figure out what you did and then stop fucking doing it. Learn a new way to behave, okay? That's Miles' greatest quote. Vince is number two. Vince was about 5'9", slim and trim. He was a drunk. He'd been on a 2-year alcoholic drunken binge after his wife was cheating with his boss, and he was the last one to find out. He was in a horrible marriage, 5 years total, married his college girlfriend, not his high school girlfriend. They both worked for the same company, some kind of aerospace company. And he just decided he didn't know anything. So he quit everything, kept his job, but quit trying to date because he failed. And he found me by accident by looking on on Amazon for books on gambling body language. And he found Body Language Secrets. He bought it. His eyes opened. And he looked out at the world with different eyes than an engineer. He was an engineer. He looked at the world at people, not as things, but as people who give away their emotional moment, whatever they're having in their body at that moment, with their body language is how it's being expressed, non-verbally. That's how it happened for 99% of our evolution. We didn't have language until 40,000 years ago. Something mutated the FOXP2 gene, I think it's called, that enabled us to have speech. So body language is a secret, and he found out in a hurry. Then he came to a workshop, but he was very afraid to come to the workshop. This poor guy's an engineer, kind of introverted, and he emailed me and wanted to know, well, everybody laughed at me. I said, no, nobody laughs at you here because we're all in the same boat. Come on in, and I guarantee you, nobody's going to laugh at you. And if you cry, that's okay. Your balls won't fall off. I've cried plenty of times in therapy and groups like this. No big deal. Come on. So he came, and he was dressed like an engineer. Brown shoes, blue pants that were about that much too short, Argyle socks, a black leather belt, blue and red shirt, blue, red, and green shirt, just a horrible, ugly shirt. And his belt was in backwards the way a girl puts it in. He had no clue. And he came back after that workshop, and he had read all of the books. He had gone through what I call the fucking archives, which is 20,000 posts, the 20,000 best posts out of 80,000 on my discussion group. And he had gleaned out of those 20,000 posts what he called How to Date Young Women, Volume 3. And he cut and pasted it into a book. And the book, that thing, 8.5 by 11. And he came to the workshop, and I said, what have you been doing? And he stood up in front of everybody, dropped this big-ass phone book size thing onto the floor. And he said, I wrote this book. And he read it religiously. He went over and over everything people had, the problem he had or the problem he ran into, and learned from it. What did they do to get out of that? That's what the list is for. We put on there what we did, what happened, and what I want to do next time. Every time you fuck up, you post on the list what I did, what happened, and what do I want to do next time. And that puts it in your subconscious. So I had taught this, I teach that technique in every workshop. And Vince had applied that fully, and he went away, came back, I think 3 or 4 workshops later, and he reported that he got a new job. See if I get this right. And he was now moving from one job site to another, doing whatever he did, systems engineering, but I don't remember who he was working for. And he was like a troubleshooter. He would go in and look at their, I'm using words I don't know what it means, algorithms for whatever they were doing, and he would rewrite their algorithms after talking to the fucking geeks. I don't know what he did. Anyway, during that trip, he applied all the Steel Balls principles. And he would go around these 5 different states like this. And he had 5 women in 4 different states. One of the states you can get anywhere. But he used all the principles, and he found out, God, this shit works. Body language, assertiveness training, liking yourself, and dressing like women want you to dress. So he kept that up until he found the love of his life sitting in a jacuzzi at a condo somewhere where he was on one of these trips. And he did everything right. They were talking briefly, and then he left. And she wondered, what the fuck did he do that for? That's called setting the hook, like that. So he got her, and he ended up marrying her about 4 years later. And that's Vince. The other one I talk about a lot, one of my biggest accomplishments was Brian, a software geek times 50, who worked for, you know who, Bill Gates. And he came to the workshop after reading How to Date Young Women and Body Language. And he, of course, was dressed like a geek, had a little boy's haircut that he'd had since he was 6 years old, and confessed through tears that he was a virgin. He'd never even been kissed. And he was tired of it. He was 28 years old, and he had no idea what to do, and the book sounded real compared to the other pickup books. Mine isn't a pickup book, by the way. Mine's a how-to book, how to actually do it. Anyway, Brian was introverted and afraid of girls because he had some bad experiences being rejected in junior high school. So he didn't talk to anybody. And he'd been at wherever he was, whatever division he was in, for a year. And nobody talked to him. and he didn't talk to anybody else. So I sent him home from that workshop with a very simple assignment. All I want you to do, Brian, is when you're walking out of your apartment building in the morning and you see somebody coming at you, I just want you to make eye contact with them. You don't have to say anything, you don't have to do anything, just make sure your eyes meet. Can you do that just one time? He said, sure. So he did it. And then by email, I said, try it twice a week. You can spread it out as far as you want. See if you can do eye contact twice a week. And he was able to do that. And he did that at work then. I said, now do it at work. Just make eye contact when you're walking down that cube farm. You don't have to say anything. And after 3 weeks, I had him saying, good morning, how are you? And lo and behold, he reported that people told him they thought he was a stuck-up asshole. And he said, no, I'm just shy. I'm scared to talk to anybody. And they all commiserated with him. They said, yeah, moving and all that stuff. And he found out it's not a sin to be shy. It's okay. Everybody experiences that. So that was one of his biggest breakthroughs. Then he got a girlfriend. I think I put him on 20 coffee dates because he'd never been on a date. He learned how to date, basically. Then he went to a lot of wedding receptions because at that age you have millions of opportunities to go to weddings when you're about 30. And he learned how to dance. He learned how to carry on a conversation. He learned how to give her his business card and how to email. And, the basics of getting to know somebody before before text. So he went on to become very successful in his job through assertiveness training and speaking up in meetings and looking people in the eye and all the basic stuff I teach about how to be a human being, not just a pickup guy. It helps you in every aspect of your life. So then he was changing jobs, and I said, no, you're not getting enough money. You need to ask for more. You can do lots of things that aren't on your resume. Expand it, blow it up, make it bigger. Write your boss's job. You've seen all this office politics. You've got to blow yourself up because they discount it when you take it over there. Then you can do the job anyway, for Christ's sake. So Brian got a good big job increase, and that makes your confidence go through the fucking roof. He went from where are all the geeks? Seattle to San Francisco, and he was so good they put him in charge of a whole division at 31 years old. He was making gazillions of bucks and had responsibility out the ass. He was in charge of that. I can't remember what it's called. I had one on the web TV. I think it was a keyboard, and somehow you hooked up to your TV. My computers were hacked 5 times by Ross Jeffries and his hackers, and I was down to the web TV. It was the only way to keep my list running and keep my website going. So I understood it, and it turns out he's one of the geeks that invented that thing and was in charge of getting it into classrooms or whatever the fuck he was. Anyway, met a girl there. She had a business of, what do you call those people that arrange weddings? I don't know. Wedding arranger, I suppose. Anyway, that was her job. And she knew how to get along with people, very extroverted girl, and they were good for each other. They filled in each other's holes. And lo and behold, 2 years later, they got married. I went to his wedding in Seattle. He was back there making even more money. And I mentioned him a lot. He taught himself to play guitar when he was 14, hoping that girls would like him. So his nickname was Stradivarius. It never worked, but he was a good guitar player. And that's the first 2. There's 4 or 5 more. George, Dr. J, Paul from Calabasas. I just give you a little bit about each one. George came when he was 28, and he was also an engineer of some kind of medical instrumentation, a physicist. And his girlfriend had dumped him in college, and he was so upset he slashed his wrist and tried to die. And he just subconsciously sabotaged every relationship he was in because he didn't want to ever fall in love again. So he knew there was something wrong with him. He came to the workshop after reading How to Date Young Women and Body Language. Those 2 big books get everybody. And he learned everything quickly. He learned assertiveness training and body language. And he came to a workshop, and the girls all said, your walk is just horrible. You don't look like a drunk, but you look like a sailor or something. You're rocking back and forth. And so I videotaped him, and he watched. He said, my God, I walk like a caveman. So he spent the next 6 weeks teaching himself how to walk and stay vertical, not rock back and forth and not make his arms swing like alley-oop. So he got his walk under control. Now his confidence is through the roof. And he's 5'6", and he said, well, I can't get a date because everybody in those dating sites just don't want to talk to somebody who's 5'6". And I said, well, you got to find an Asian girl. They're much shorter than Americans. And so George, being an engineer, figured it out. He said he went to every Japanese restaurant in Orange County till he found a nice, short, young girl, 20 years old, that he liked, and she liked him, and the rest is history. George was a big success story. I was going to give you a preview. Let me stick to that. Eric was a virgin when he came to me, 6'2", beautiful square jaw, face, blue eyes, a Nordic god, but he was fat. He weighed 280 pounds and had never done any exercise. Enrique was a divorced guy, was in separated guy, had been in a horrible divorce battle with his ex-wife over the kids. She took the kids. They lived in Switzerland and flew to New York with them, and he was having a hell of a time dealing with that. And he wasn't getting laid. He was horny and lonely. So he joined the list, and 2 of his videos are on my YouTube channel. Just look up Enrique, and you'll get to watch where he went from 0 to hero. Dr. J is the best of all. He's a boat child at 6 years old. He and his father escaped Vietnam and ended up in Thailand or Cambodia, I think Thailand. They were at camp there for 5 years, and then they got sent to San Diego to a camp, and John had a bicycle by the time he was 15. When the rest of us had bicycles almost all our childhood and so on. Anyway, he put himself through college and med school, and he came to me at 30 years old dressed like a typical guy in a Budweiser commercial. And I told him, I said, no wonder you're not getting anywhere. Nobody really dresses like that gets anywhere. That's just what they wish they could dress like and attract women. So I got him to dress right and learned assertiveness training, learned body language, and he worked on he had an accent. It wasn't really heavy. You could understand it, but he pluralized too many wrong things. He just sounded like he got off the boat, even though he's a medical school graduate, okay? So he cleaned up his language. And the only experience he ever had was with a woman who was basically a prostitute who was fucking him all the time and watching porn. That was the only experience he had with women. So he wanted to get a real girlfriend. So he came and joined the list and went through all the shit everybody has to go through to get there. But imagine starting as a boat child in Vietnam and ending up a doctor making, he makes so much money now. Helping him negotiate his salary from $200,000 to $600,000 is one of my greatest accomplishments. Paul Calabasas weighed 300 pounds, had been unemployed for a year, was smoking dope every day, sitting on the couch watching TV. And something motivated him to come to the workshop. And 2 years later, he weighed 180 pounds. He was running marathons and had a girlfriend. But he had a crazy fucking Christian parents, poor fucker. So he had to deal with all of that. Okay, I may never do this again, so you're gonna have to live with the previews of those guys. Short version is, be willing to make mistakes, as many as you possibly can, as fast as you can, and learn from each one. Number 2, learn assertiveness training. Number 3, read body language and get it. Master your body language and then master hers. Because 90% of everything is done without words, okay? 90%. That's the biggest tip in the world right there. Okay, this is Don Steele out until the next video.